You can bury a flame, but not the heat that follows. And, oh, look who's choking on their own script. Look at them, chosen one, wide-eyed, breathless, running around like headless chickens in a thunderstorm they started. They thought they were writing your ending, but oops, turns out they were just drafting their own downfall. With permanent ink. You feel that? That pressure in the air? That's not your burden. That's their panic. That's the weight of every fake smile, every backstab, every whispered lie crashing down all at once. Beautiful, isn't it? They messed up. Bad. Not a little slip. Not a minor misstep. No, this is full-blown, all gas no brakes, driving into a wall-level self-destruction. And now, they're begging, crying out to anyone who'll listen, trying to get help, anywhere. But help's not coming. Not when you made your bed in betrayal and tried to set someone else on fire in it. They didn't just target a person, they took a swing at someone the universe had marked. And now the universe is swinging back, not softly, not politely, but with precision and zero sympathy. Oh, see what just happened? Before we dive deeper, go ahead and like this video and subscribe. Not just because it helps the algorithm, because the more you engage, the more this message reaches the next chosen one who's watching their enemies spiral and wondering if they're crazy for enjoying it. You're not. This is what justice looks like when it stops asking nicely. Now lean in, because this part gets good. They're trying to heal, trying to make peace. Funny, right? They had no problem tearing you down when the crowd was cheering. But now the lights are off, the crowd's gone, and all they've got is the echo of what they did. And the silence of the universe not picking up the call. They can't sleep, they can't think, they can't breathe without the memory of what they tried to do to you breathing down their neck. And every time they close their eyes, they see you, not broken, not bitter, but unbothered, elevated, watching. Because that's what really eats at them. You didn't just survive, you vanished from their chaos, and now you're glowing in places they can't reach. You became the ghost they can't shake. Not dead, just above them. And oh, the irony. They used to say you were too much. Now they're choking on the silence you left behind. You became a trigger wrapped in peace. And every room they walk into, your energy's already there. Cold, unforgiving. True. They tried to bury you with gossip. Now they're buried in guilt. They tried to isolate you. Now no one's answering their calls. Not even the same people they turned against you. Because once the truth starts leaking, nobody wants to be seen bailing out a sinking ship. So let them squirm. Let them dig through every self-help book, therapist session, or prayer circle they can find. It won't save them. Not from this. Not when the collapse is internal. This isn't revenge. It's revelation. And you, chosen one, were never the villain. You were the alarm clock, the walking consequence, the cosmic correction, and they pressed snooze until it was too late. So stand tall, smile if you want, watch the show, because they're not just looking for help now, they're looking for a time machine. Too bad the universe doesn't do reruns. So tell me, are you just watching or witnessing the fallout? If what you've heard so far has your blood humming and your intuition lighting up, that's no coincidence. That's the universe confirming what you already knew. They messed up, and now they're spiraling. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you've ever seen someone try to hurt you and end up destroying themselves. Because now, we're going deeper. This next part, it'll make their downfall feel personal. Let's get into it, step by step. Stay sharp. If you're truly chosen, you won't be able to look away. Number 1. The one who set fire to their playbook. They thought you were a pawn, but you were the glitch that made the whole board collapse. Look at them now, trembling in the ruins of their own script, crying behind closed doors, asking questions out loud like, "How did this all go so wrong?" Oh, it went wrong the moment they laid dirty hands on someone chosen. The second they tried to mishandle what the universe handcrafted, their fate was sealed. You don't play chess with a storm and expect the king to survive. And now, their games? Useless. Their strategies? Burned. Their masks? Melted under the same heat they thought they could control. Chosen one, hear this loud. You weren't just different. You were dangerous to their illusion. Your light wasn't a feature, it was a threat. A spotlight exposing every fake alliance, every lie, every snake hiding in the tall grass. And still, they thought you could be pushed, ignored, reshaped. They didn't realize they weren't dealing with another clone. They were facing the original blueprint the system was never ready for. They tried to mishandle you like they do everyone else. Guilt tripped you, dismissed your boundaries, mocked your silence. They pulled every manipulative trick from their dusty little toolbox, thinking you'd fold. But you weren't in their toolbox. You were the hammer. You weren't built to bend. You were born to break patterns. And you did. That's why they're panicking now. You were the disruption, the static in their smooth broadcast, the curveball in their linear little story. They wanted easy. You brought depth. They wanted someone to shrink. You expanded. You made them feel small without even trying. And for people built on ego, that's the deepest cut. That's why they came for you. Not because you were weak, but because your very presence was an insult to their delusions. Now they're scrambling, grasping for peace in places that don't know their name, trying to gather sympathy from the same crowd they once used to mock you. But the crowd has moved on. And the universe? It's locked the exits. No prayers, no pity, no escape. They weren't just fighting you, they were going toe-to-toe with divine order. And when the universe aligns itself to protect its chosen, it doesn't need thunder to strike. It whispers first. Then it moves everything, people, time, even delay, just to place you where they can't reach. And when they still try, oh, now they find out what unreachable really looks like. You think it was coincidence they couldn't copy your essence? You think it was just luck that their lies eventually exploded in their face? No, that's alignment. That's what happens when you're chosen. You don't have to chase revenge. The universe handles it while you heal. You just had to survive. And you did. That survival? It's killing them softly every day, because every time you rise, you remind them they never had real power over you. Let me talk to the doubt inside you, that little voice asking, why me? Why not you? You're the one they studied in silence, the one they tried to copy while mocking, the one they couldn't define, so they tried to destroy. You were marked because your frequency cracked their comfort. Your existence threatened everything false they built. That's not something to question. That's something to own. And if you're still wondering why they did what they did, understand this. Your very energy violated their control. You walked in truth, and truth is offensive to those living a lie. You respected yourself in a room full of people who feed on insecurity. That's why you became the target. But guess what? They missed. And now they're haunted by the one who got away and got better. So don't you dare doubt your light again. The universe didn't pick you for comfort. It picked you for impact. You weren't built to be accepted. You were built to disrupt, to dismantle. And now that the wreckage is here, you don't need to clean it up. Just walk past it. Let them sit in what they created. Let them replay every moment they underestimated you while they beg for help from a system that doesn't respond to betrayal. You are not here to make them understand. You're here to make their understanding irrelevant. You were never meant to fit their mold. You were meant to break it. And, oh, you did. Number 2. The glue they mocked until it was gone. You were the gravity in their chaos. The second you left, everything started floating and then falling. They didn't see it at the time. Of course they didn't. Ego has a way of blinding people to their own survival mechanisms, and in their twisted little world, you were just extra, over-emotional, too deep, too quiet, too intense, too much. They really believed they were holding it all together, that without you, they'd still move just fine. But oh, look at them now. Broken routines, constant confusion, fake confidence cracking under pressure, burnt bridges smoking behind them. That's not misfortune, that's exposure. That's what happens when you remove the one stable force they spent years trying to minimize. They thought they were leading you, molding you, correcting you. They really believed they were superior. They thought their manipulation was wisdom, that their condescension was guidance. But the whole time, it was your energy that was keeping them grounded. Your presence was the silent boundary, the unspoken mirror, the moral compass they didn't even know they were using to avoid complete collapse. Until you walked. And when you did, everything they were holding together with duct tape and pride came apart at the seams. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't slam doors. You didn't need to. You just removed you. That was enough. You see, Chosen One, you were the clarity in their confusion, the order in their noise. You didn't try to control them. They just behaved better in your presence. And the moment that presence vanished, so did the mask, so did the structure. Now they're stuck in a storm that doesn't stop because the calm left it. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. They miss the version of themselves they were around you. That version made better choices, held stronger boundaries, thought twice before acting out of spite or insecurity. But without you, that hesitation is gone, and what's left is pure, raw chaos. A version of them even they can't recognize anymore. You didn't just walk away, you unplugged the electricity. You were the signal, and now they're all static, trying to make life decisions in a fog they created, chasing peace in rooms that feel colder without you. They used to roll their eyes at your calm. Now they're begging for a taste of it in the middle of their inner war. Funny, isn't it? How they used to make you feel like the problem, like the one who needed fixing. But you were the balance, the restraint, the intuition they never thanked, but always leaned on, until it was gone. Now they're clinging to substitutes, rushing into new friendships, new lovers, new communities, hoping someone else can bring that energy back. But it doesn't work, because the truth is, they weren't drawn to your presence by chance. They were fed by it. And now that they're starving, they're realizing just how much you gave without even trying. But that's their burden now, not yours. Because here's what you need to hear, Chosen One. You were never hard to love. They were just too damaged to value peace, too addicted to dysfunction to sit in the stillness your presence brought. And instead of growing with you, they tried to break you. They resented the way your energy exposed their chaos, so they pushed you out, thinking it would bring relief. All it did was remove the only thing keeping their world from spiraling. Now look at them, making reckless decisions, fighting with people they once trusted, paranoid over shadows that aren't even there. Why? Because you're not there to regulate the temperature anymore. You're not softening their rage. You're not calming their fear. You're not catching their lies with that sharp, silent look that said, "I see right through you." You were the anchor they didn't think they needed, until they let go and started drifting into madness. And let's address that doubt in your head, the part that wonders, was I really that important? Yes, you were. You didn't see the storm because you were the eye of it, the center, the part that made everything seem okay, even when it wasn't, the one that stopped them from fully collapsing. Your presence was the difference between self-destruction delayed and self-destruction unleashed. You were the balance in their equation, the light on their lies, the compass they tried to ignore but secretly followed. And now that you're gone, they're navigating in the dark with broken tools, wondering why nothing feels right anymore. They made the mistake of thinking your presence was optional. They treated your energy like it was replaceable. Now they know better, because no matter how many people they collect, how many distractions they chase, none of it feels like you. Because it's not supposed to. The universe doesn't mass produce what it hand carves. And that chaos they're in now, that confusion, it's not random. It's the echo of your absence, the vacuum left behind when divine energy exits a room. It's what happens when someone plays with the one thing that kept their world spinning straight and drops it like it was nothing. So let them scramble. Let them text people who don't care. Let them vent to therapists about everything falling apart. You don't need to respond. You don't need to explain. You just need to keep rising. Because your absence isn't just a loss to them. It's a warning to everyone watching, to everyone who ever thought they could handle you without honoring you. You don't chase people who mishandled your peace. You remind them what their life looked like before you left. You were never the burden. You were the blessing. And now you're gone. And their chaos proves it. Number 3, they tried knives on a ghost. They thought you were soft because you bled, never realizing you were healing in motion. They came with everything, lies dressed up as concern, gossip wrapped in fake smiles, manipulation wearing a borrowed face of love, weapons disguised as affection. But not once did they stop to study what they were attacking. They never took a second to ask themselves, what if this one's different? Because if they had, they would have known. They weren't piercing skin. They were wasting ammunition on someone who was built for war. They couldn't survive. Chosen one, they didn't understand your armor because they assumed you didn't have any. You were kind, so they mistook you for naive. You were forgiving, so they thought you were weak. You stayed silent, so they assumed you had nothing to say. But what they didn't know, what they'll never forget, is that your silence was never surrender. It was surveillance. While they were busy throwing darts, you were watching patterns. While they played loud, sloppy games, you were documenting timelines in your mind like clockwork. And when you didn't react, they called it coldness, because only fools confuse peace with passivity. You weren't ignoring their attacks. You were watching them dig their own graves in real time. You were letting the weight of their own wickedness fold them up from the inside. They had no idea who they were dealing with, no clue that the more chaos they threw at you, the more centered you became. You weren't flinching, you were calculating. They thought they were breaking you, but you were learning how far they'd go. You were learning what betrayal looks like up close. And now they're shocked that you're still standing, still whole, still rising. Meanwhile, they're exhausted, fighting shadows, tormented by silence that screams louder than any words you could say. They tried to bait you into reacting, tried to paint you as unstable, irrational, defensive, but your stillness ruined their entire strategy. Because when you didn't clap back, when you didn't defend yourself, when you didn't crumble, you exposed them. You showed everyone that their rage, their obsession, their slander, it wasn't a response to harm. It was a symptom of being confronted by truth too strong to destroy. Your armor wasn't made of steel. It was made of scars. Every wound they thought they were inflicting, already healed. Every rumor they tried to spread, already neutralized by your authenticity. You were protected in ways they couldn't touch, because your shield was never physical, it was spiritual. And spiritual protection doesn't make noise. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just sits, silently absorbing attacks that bounce off and boomerang back toward the sender. You want to know why they're paranoid now? Why they can't stop looking over their shoulder, refreshing their notifications, and second-guessing every conversation? Because they remember how much they tried to ruin you, and they can't believe none of it worked. That kind of failure drives cowards insane. That kind of divine immunity triggers people whose entire identity is built on control. And now they're unraveling. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. Your silence, deafening, your detachment, haunting, your peace, proof. They've come to realize that every little game they played, every narrative they tried to twist, every mask they wore around others while stabbing you in private, it all fell flat. Because the one thing they underestimated was your ability to take hits without losing your form. You are not unscarred, you are unshaken, and that difference is what they'll never understand. They never knew you had armor because you never bragged about it. You didn't need to. You wore it like skin, light, invisible, but unbreakable. And now they're starting to realize you were never the weak one. You were the quiet one, the one who walks away while everything behind you burns itself to the ground. Now they sit in the ashes, wondering how you're glowing while they're gasping, wondering why nothing they do gets a response, why you don't reach out, why you don't play the game anymore. Here's why. Because when you're chosen, you don't fight every battle. You become the storm they thought they'd survive. So let them spiral, let them overthink, let them chase shadows trying to recreate the damage they swore they already did. Let them burn out trying to understand a strength that was never meant for them. And most of all, let them suffer in the silence they once tried to weaponize against you. They used every tool in the book, but none of it worked, because they were swinging swords at someone who already made peace with every wound. And now, all they've got left is confusion, chaos, and the echo of your name in the middle of every sleepless night. Number 4. You held the mirror, and they shattered themselves. You didn't break them. You just stood there, still, whole, honest, and they couldn't survive the reflection. They knew it before you did, way before. They felt the threat not in your words, but in your existence. Your integrity walked into the room 10 seconds before you did, and their masks started slipping before you even opened your mouth. They were uncomfortable around you, not because you were offensive, but because you were honest. And in a world built on pretending, honesty is a wrecking ball. You didn't need to raise your voice. You didn't need revenge. You didn't have to plot, post, or prove anything. You just had to be. You walked in with calm energy, and it triggered chaos in people who only know how to operate in lies. Your truth made their entire personality start glitching. That wasn't an accident. It was exposure. And you didn't even mean to do it. That's the best part. Your integrity was a ticking time bomb, and they heard it. They felt the countdown every time you didn't react the way they expected, every time you chose silence over drama, stillness over chaos, distance over attention. That scared them, because they knew, deep down, they were being watched by someone who could see them, not just what they showed, who they really were, and they couldn't stand it. That's why they came for you. That's why they tried to twist the story. They couldn't manipulate your truth, so they tried to rewrite theirs. Gossip, lies, half-truths soaked in insecurity. They painted you as unstable, bitter, difficult, all because you wouldn't play the role they assigned. But the truth? It doesn't need to scream. It sits in silence, letting the lies pile up like kindling. And when the match is finally struck, it burns everything they built, not you. They thought your quiet was weakness, thought your calm meant defeat, but you were never retreating. You were letting the storm reveal itself. You knew your integrity would age like proof, and their lies would rot like fruit in the sun. And now it's all unraveling, thread by thread. And the best part? You didn't do a thing. They exposed themselves trying to destroy you. You weren't trying to be unstoppable. You just refused to be fake. That alone made you untouchable, because people who are rooted in truth don't flinch when the wind changes. But people built on pretense, they crumble the second the room stops clapping. They didn't fear your rage, they feared your restraint. They feared the fact that you could know everything and still not fold, not lash out, not play dirty. That kind of control, that kind of internal power, it terrifies people who rely on chaos to win. They spent so much time spinning stories that they forgot the one thing truth does best: wait. Truth waits, watches, and when the lies can't keep up anymore, it steps forward and doesn't have to say a word. It just is. And that's you. The walking mirror, the walking contradiction to their fiction. You didn't out them with a post or a scene. You outlived them in peace. And now they're scrambling to fix a reputation you never tried to touch. That's the sick irony. You were the better person, and that's what buried them. Your grace outshined their games. Your distance became your defense. And now, their whole house of cards is collapsing while you're out building something real. Let's get this straight. You didn't cause their downfall. You revealed it, just by existing, just by standing in your truth and refusing to let anyone drag you into their chaos. They unraveled because they couldn't get a reaction out of you. That silence, that was your loudest message. That was the blow they didn't see coming. And for a moment, they thought they won, thought your quiet meant defeat, thought your calm was fear. But now they know that silence was loaded. It was filled with every truth you didn't need to explain. And now, it's echoing louder than any scream they ever made about you. You see, Chosen One, your power was never in your fists. It was in your foundation. You were never pretending. And that's why they broke while trying to break you. Their whole existence depended on keeping up a version of themselves that only survived around people who couldn't see clearly. But you saw. You knew. You stayed quiet not because you didn't have the truth, but because you were the truth. And the truth doesn't chase, it doesn't beg, it doesn't convince, it just waits. And then it rises. So let them fall apart. Let them play victim in the disaster they created. Let them whisper your name in rooms where no one trusts them anymore. You don't have to prove they were wrong. You just have to keep living like you always were, unshaken, unmoved, and fully awake. Because in the end, your integrity didn't just protect you, it ended them. Number 5. The applause you never clapped for. They tried to humble you in front of crowds they were performing for. You just smiled because you weren't in the audience to begin with. Here's what broke them, and they'll never admit it. You didn't need their approval. You never begged for acceptance. You weren't sitting at the table asking to be fed. You brought your own damn chair, and that's what shattered their illusion of power. They couldn't comprehend how someone could be so whole without outside applause, how you could walk into rooms without shrinking, without posturing, without playing the game. You didn't chase validation because you already knew who you were. And that freedom, that rattled them more than any insult you could have thrown. You see, they needed claps to breathe. They needed followers to feel seen. They needed gossip to feel relevant. Their identity was stitched together by opinions, fragile, constantly shifting, and never enough. But you were just being, existing in your truth without begging for a like, a cosign, or a round of fake applause. And for people who rely on the outside to survive inside, that kind of inner peace is offensive. You didn't shrink. You didn't perform. You didn't care about impressing people who weren't even sure of themselves. And that confidence, that effortless, I'm good either way energy, it flipped their whole system upside down. Because if you didn't need their approval, you also couldn't be controlled by it. And that, chosen one, is what scared them most. They tried to figure you out, tried to decode the formula behind your calm. They questioned it, mocked it, tried to shake it, but no matter what they threw at you, you didn't flinch. You weren't cold, you weren't arrogant, you were just free. And freedom is terrifying to people still trapped in performance. You were walking around with self-worth they hadn't earned, but desperately wanted. And instead of learning from you, they turned on you. That's why they tried to dim your light. That's why they questioned your choices. That's why they whispered about your independence and tried to turn it into a flaw. Because your peace didn't come with conditions, and theirs never existed without them. They saw someone who didn't need attention, didn't need to fit in, didn't need to explain themselves, and they panicked. Because if you could do that, what did that say about the way they were living? Chained to trends, addicted to acceptance, starving for attention and calling it confidence. Now here's the twist. They're trying to find the very peace they tried to rob from you. Reading books about boundaries, watching videos about self-worth, quoting affirmations they don't even believe. But nothing's sticking. Because they still don't understand that peace can't be performed. It has to be earned in silence, tested in solitude, and built in the fire of rejection without losing yourself. They thought they could fake what you became. And now they're chasing shadows, buying healing in a bottle, mimicking stillness while screaming inside. All while you move in silence, untouched, unmoved, unfazed. Not better than them, beyond them. And let's make this crystal clear. You never needed to be liked to be powerful. You never needed to be seen to shine. They tried to paint you as difficult, antisocial, too distant, but that was just projection. What they really meant was, I can't figure out how to control someone who doesn't care if I approve. Because how do you manipulate someone who doesn't need your handouts? How do you guilt trip someone who doesn't need the group? How do you shame someone who already faced themselves and didn't flinch? You broke the cycle by not needing to play in it. You became the exception in a world obsessed with performance. And that's why they turned against you. But here's the irony. The same people who mocked your solitude are now drowning in a crowd that never sees them, surrounded but empty, loud but invisible, applauded but forgotten the moment the music stops. You've been steady, solid. Alone doesn't mean lonely when you know your own worth. You don't need to be the loudest in the room because your energy already speaks first. So keep walking, keep ignoring the bait, keep staying true even when nobody's watching, especially then, because you're not here to be palatable, you're here to be undeniable. They couldn't understand how you stayed whole without their validation, and now they're falling apart trying to get yours. Number 6. They laughed low. Now they panic, loud. They used to whisper behind your back. Now they scream into the void, hoping someone will save them from the consequences. At first, it was subtle, quiet hatred, little jabs disguised as jokes, side eyes wrapped in fake smiles, snide comments under their breath when they thought you couldn't hear. You saw it, you felt it. The energy was never right, but you let it slide because you knew they didn't hate you. They hated what you made them confront. They hated the way you moved without needing attention, the way you didn't flinch when they excluded you, the way your silence made their chaos louder. You weren't loud, you weren't reactive, you weren't trying to prove anything, and that made them nervous. So they hated you, silently, soft at first, a smirk here, a fake compliment there. They underestimated you, thought your quiet meant small. But now they're loud, and it's not boldness, it's fear. They mock-laughed back then. Now they're looking over their shoulder. You know why? Because they can't read you anymore. You stopped giving them access, and that's killing them. The silence they once called weakness is now a wall they can't climb, a locked gate they used to walk through freely. They're pacing around it now, desperate for a window, a crack, a clue. They used to mock your energy. Now they're paying people to study it. Life coaches, therapists, fake healers, TikTok timelines. Anything that might explain why their life feels off since you walked out. They're asking for insight into something they once laughed at. You. They thought they had the upper hand, but now they're losing grip. Bad. And you haven't even moved. Because here's what they didn't count on. You were never predictable. They thought they knew how you'd react. They thought you'd clap back, argue, try to prove your worth. But when you didn't play their game, they lost their strategy. Your silence, that wasn't confusion. That was clarity. They couldn't handle it then, and they definitely can't handle it now. Now they're spiraling, loud, sloppy, throwing tantrums disguised as warnings, playing victim to the same crowd they once entertained with stories about you. But no one's buying it anymore, because the calmest person in the story, the one they tried to label as unstable, isn't even speaking. You just disappeared, quietly, cleanly, like you knew they'd eventually need noise to distract from their truth. And now they're scared, not of what you'll do, of what you already did. You detached, you walked, you outgrew the entire performance, and you did it with no theatrics. That's power they can't fake. That's distance they can't close. They're not watching you out of curiosity. They're watching because they don't feel safe anymore. Not in who they are, not in what they've built. Because all of it was structured on being above you. And now that you're gone, the whole thing feels hollow. And let's be real, you never had to ruin them. They're doing that on their own. You just stopped helping them hide from themselves. That's what this is really about. You were the buffer, the mirror, the unspoken boundary that kept them from going full self-destruct. And now that you're gone, they're unraveling, loudly, because they finally realize you weren't the one holding things up. You were the reason it didn't all collapse sooner. Let them panic. Let them check your page from burner accounts. Let them vent to people who know better now, because no matter how loud they get, they can't drown out the truth. You didn't change. They ran out of control. So no, you weren't the quiet one because you were weak. You were the quiet one because you were calculating. And now, they're screaming in the very silence they tried to bury you in. You didn't need to strike back. You didn't need to expose them. You just walked away. And somehow, that's what hit them hardest. Number 7. You became the receipt they can't return. They built a case against you. Your life tore it apart just by existing. They really thought they could finish you off with whispers and watered-down lies, thought if they threw enough shade, you'd disappear in the dark. But you didn't vanish. You glowed, quietly, consistently, while they screamed into echo chambers trying to convince the world you were everything they feared you weren't. You never argued. You never stooped to their level. You never played the game. And that's what made it worse for them. Because the more they talked, the more your life started to contradict every single word. Every lie they launched, exposed by your actions. Every rumor they floated, drowned by your results. See, they underestimated the power of someone who doesn't need to announce their greatness. You didn't need applause. You didn't need the mic. You were the proof. Your life became the receipt they can't tear up. You showed up. You leveled up. You moved on. And that momentum, that peace, that glow, that was the silent answer to every question they ever tried to raise about your worth. And now they look crazy. Because nothing they said stuck, nothing they tried worked, and they're stuck replaying the same lies while your reality keeps evolving. Their stories stayed stagnant. Your life kept growing. And that contrast, it's loud. It screams the truth without you ever opening your mouth. They're suffocating under the weight of their own lies now, trying to backpedal, trying to make peace, not because they're sorry, but because the truth finally caught up and it's sprinting at full speed. They can't spin the story anymore, not when you're walking proof that they never had the power they pretended to. You weren't just surviving, you were thriving in silence. And that's a nightmare for people who depend on your downfall to validate their identity. You robbed them of that, not by clapping back, but by standing tall, standing still, and letting the facts speak. You didn't need to tell your side of the story. You became the story. And now they're the footnote. So let them deal with that. Let them wrestle with the tension of watching the one they tried to erase become undeniable. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them a conversation. You already gave them the one thing they can't fake: reality. And it's staring them in the face every time they see you shine. Number 8. They called you crazy, then copied your homework. They laughed at your vision until the world started clapping for it. They called you delusional, said you were reaching, too ambitious, too deep, too bold. They mocked your ideas, your creativity, your silence, your intensity. But behind all that noise, they were taking notes, in secret, in shadows, with locked screens and whispered curiosity. Because the truth is, you weren't crazy, you were ahead. They didn't understand your moves, so they dismissed them. Couldn't comprehend your vision, so they turned it into a joke. But deep down, they knew. They saw something in you they couldn't replicate. They laughed to hide the envy, laughed to drown out the unease of knowing they were standing next to the blueprint while still trying to trace outlines from someone else's design. You didn't need the crowd, you didn't need their approval, you had clarity, and that clarity made them uncomfortable. So they turned to sarcasm, thinking if they could reduce you, they wouldn't have to face the fact that you saw something they didn't. But look now. Look close. They're copying the same things they once rolled their eyes at, mimicking your style, your tone, your path, repackaging your originality and praying no one connects the dots. They weren't inspired, they were intimidated. You became the silent threat in a room full of loud pretenders. They wanted your results without your risk, your light without your shadow, your shine without your solitude. But it doesn't work like that, because what you built came from soul, not strategy. And that's something you can't fake. They studied your every move hoping to catch a formula, but there is no formula for authenticity. You were the original. You are the original. And now that the world is finally catching up, they're stuck chasing a version of your brilliance that they never truly understood. Now they're frustrated because they tried to clown you before the crowd, but the crowd is starting to cheer for what they mocked. And the applause? It doesn't come to the copy. It follows the creator. Let them scramble. Let them search for shortcuts to a destination you carved with your own hands. Let them mimic your moves while you keep evolving. You don't have to expose them. The truth already is, because when you're the source, the shadow always arrives late. So stand tall, keep shining, keep creating. While they're busy imitating what they once couldn't comprehend, you're already 10 steps ahead. Again. And this time, there's no catching up. Number 9. They tried to bury you. Now you're the billboard. They tried to throw dirt on your name, and now it's all they can taste. They really thought they could cancel you, thought that if they lied enough, exaggerated enough, whispered in just the right ears, you'd disappear, fade out, crumble under pressure. They thought smearing your name would erase your existence, rewrite your narrative, and redirect the spotlight. But instead of destroying you, they highlighted you. Every rumor became an amplifier. Every lie became a spotlight. And now, the attention they tried to weaponize is shining straight back at them. They didn't cancel you. They accidentally marketed you. They made you unforgettable by trying to erase you. That's the thing about people who operate in fear. They mistake silence for surrender. They think if you're not screaming back, you're broken. But you weren't hiding. You were rising. And by the time they realized it, you had already stepped into a version of yourself they can't touch. They dragged your name, hoping to poison your purpose. What they didn't expect was that your purpose was immune. Because your value doesn't come from reputation, it comes from reality. And in reality, you're untouchable. In reality, you're rising while they're stuck recycling the same tired lies that even their audience has stopped believing. They bet everything on your collapse. Now they're paying the price for a gamble they never should have made. You were the test, and they failed. Spectacularly. Not just publicly, not just socially, but mentally, emotionally, generationally. They passed down dysfunction, passed up healing, and now they're watching you become what they pretended you'd never be. And here's the sick irony. They thought they were discrediting you, but all they did was remove the weak connections that weren't meant for you anyway. They cleaned the path, pushed out the fakes, cleared the room. And in that silence, your real voice finally had space to speak. And people listened. Now they're haunted. because the version of you they tried to erase is standing taller than ever. Their smear campaign became your promotion. Their gossip became your gravity. And your existence? It's proof that none of their power plays landed. They screamed lies, hoping the crowd would echo them. But the echo died off. And you kept moving. You didn't survive to prove them wrong. You outlived them by being right. Quietly, powerfully, consistently. That kind of stability shakes people who've never stood on solid ground. And now they watch. From a distance, uninvited, powerless. Because they know you're not just the one who got away. You're the one who became untouchable. Let's make one thing clear. They didn't lose control of you. They never had it. What they had was the illusion of power, an illusion you shattered by refusing to play along. And when the lies didn't land, and the crowd didn't turn, and you kept building anyway, they panicked. Because once you show people the truth, no lie can compete with it. They thought they could control the narrative, but you became the headline. And every attempt to discredit you, it only made your story louder. They can't outrun it now. They can't downplay your success, because your results speak the language they tried to silence. Your growth? Loud. Your glow? Inescapable. Your presence? Unavoidable. And the best part? You didn't do it to get even. You did it because that's who you've always been. You didn't become a force to prove them wrong. You've always been the force. They just couldn't recognize it without a crowd to agree. But now the crowd is watching, and the applause is getting louder, and they can't find a way to mute what they started. You are the fallout they never calculated. You are the proof that not everything can be erased. So let them carry the weight of their own lies. Let them scroll through your success and feel the silence hit harder than any response ever could. Because what they really cancelled was their own credibility. And now you walk forward, free, unbothered, and impossible to ignore. And just like that, the mask is off, the lies collapsed, and the truth stands undefeated. If you made it this far, you already know. You weren't just watching a breakdown, you were witnessing the consequences. The chosen never have to force revenge. Their existence is the return fire. If you felt this in your spirit, like the video, subscribe to keep this energy flowing, and drop the number 77 in the comments so we know you're walking in truth, not fear. And share this with another chosen one, because someone out there still thinks they're crazy for surviving the setup.